thankful for the way these stories hold on to the lifetime we won't get back. I know these rivers carry on. People tend to stick to you after time. Places tend to do the same as we do. This river carries on and on.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake Lamore, and I always joke about this every time I see our guest today, and I'm sure he was expecting it too, but there are technically two Jake Lees in the room right now, because Lee happens to be my middle name. Obviously, my legal is your legal name Jacob too, I assume?
It is.
Okay,
yes,
so yeah, so there's two Jacob Lees in the room technically, but Lee is not my last name. That is the difference. So, and it's funny because really the only person that calls me Jacob Lee is my grandmother on my dad's side, because Lee is her maiden name. So that's where that comes from. So she's literally the only person that will call me Jacob Lee or write Jacob Lee, because she's got to sport her maiden name. But anyway, welcome Jake Lee, Kankakee Auditor. Welcome to Kankakee Podcast. Yeah, it's good to see you. It's been a while. I was trying to think of the last. I think maybe it was. It might have been at the radio station. I think
Probably.
The last time. I know. Usually, if I don't see you at the radio station, it's randomly out and about. But I want to say the last time I can remember seeing you was at the radio station. It must have been before the pandemic.
Yep.
And we were talking about I remember asking you questions about, now I don't remember specifically what name it was called at the time, but they were trying to form some type of Kankakee River Conservancy group or organization of some kind. Remember that? And there was a referendum or something that people could vote on, on whether they were willing to pay, I forget, X amount of dollars to go towards, but the only people that were within a certain mileage or feet or distance of the river could vote on for this thing. And I had just moved to this house that is right next to the river. So I remember asking you, I'm like, am I included in this? Like, I don't have riverfront property. Like, I don't have a great view of the river. I can see like this much of it, like a centimeter or two, maybe of it from my house. But yeah, I remember asking about that, and you pulled out the. I don't know if you had the map with you, if we looked it up online, but you showed it to me, and you were very, very helpful with that.
Oh, good.
So thank you. And that didn't pass.
No, it failed miserably.
So, I mean, I guess that's getting into politics a little bit, but I mean, I'm not shocked that it didn't pass just because it was another thing that people would have to fork over money for. But I think, speaking of that, though, I guess this is kind of relevant because I did see the county board share photos recently of the shorelines or the riverbanks of how the sand
and the erosion
is. I think it if I'm not mistaken, it improved or it got worse. I can't remember which. You know, I know you're in the finances, obviously.
Yeah, I think it has improved a little because I know on the Indiana side, especially, they've planted lots of trees and vegetation and so forth to try to combat some of that erosion that was taking place with the Yellow River and all of that. So I think there was some improvement, but I hadn't seen the pictures, so I'm not sure.
It was, I love what I do this to myself all the time. I say, oh yeah, I saw this one thing, but I can't remember exactly what it said. And I'm just so good at doing that to myself. But I want to say it was posted just yesterday.
Oh, okay.
On the Kankakee County Board Facebook page.
Oh, okay.
And of course, we are recording this on August 20th. So yesterday would have been the August 19th. And if I also remember correctly, they were talking about how a lot of progress, kind of like you were just pointing out, a lot of progress has been made along the Kankakee River in Indiana. And that's why things are looking better on this.
Yes.
So, and as you pointed out, it has to do with the Yellow River Basin Development Commission is officially what it's called in Indiana. So, nothing like completely starting off topic because we're here to talk about you. I want to learn more about you. And I think it's really important people learn more about the people that are in our community and that are successful. I consider you to be very successful. If I'm not mistaken, you're the first African American auditor for the county, right?
First county-wide elected.
County-wide elected.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
It is.
That's a huge accomplishment.
It really is.
Yeah. So but obviously there's so many other. You're obviously to me. You seem qualified. And like I said, I'm sure someone's listening to this now. They might disagree with me, but that's fine. I don't know a lot about everything, or a lot. Wow, that sounded dumb. I don't know a lot about, auditing and financing, but that's why you're here. You're here to educate me on that and also your life. So where does life begin for Jake Lee? Because I had heard that you were born in the county.
I was at Riverside.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it was when Kent Wade was on the show.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I heard that interview. He mentioned me.
Yeah, he mentioned you.
Friend, Kent Wade.
And that's what...
Yes.
And that was another reason why I was like, oh, okay. It's like, I need to talk to Jake. Him and I need to talk and see what's going on. So, So you're born at Riverside Hospital, but particularly you grew up in Pembroke Township, right?
Hopkins Park.
Hopkins Park.
The village of Hopkins. Yes.
Village, which is...
It's inside of Pembroke Township.
Yeah, I was going to say it's right inside there. Yeah.
Yep.
So, how does life go for you starting from... from Hopkins Park.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted me to start from birth.
I mean, you can start from...
don't remember much.
If you can recollect from that day, I would be... I'd be flabbergasted.
I will say that one of the kind of neat things, I guess you could say, is I was a late comer. So I was born about 2 to 2.5 weeks late. So my mother was induced in labor to have me. Apparently, I just wasn't ready.
At that time, I don't know. I could be wrong, but I feel like at that time, there wasn't a lot of that going on. There's more of that going on now.
Yeah.
But back then, most of them, they just let it happen when it would happen.
Yeah. So I think I was a painful experience for her. And I'm the youngest. So I've got siblings older than me. There's 14 years between me and my oldest sibling. So I mean, there's, and, but I was probably her most difficult.
Man.
Which,
shoot.
So one of the most interesting things, I guess I'll say, that has happened in my life has to do with a horrific accident I had at the age of 4. And I often start the story off by asking people, and I'll ask you this question.
Yeah.
If you have, or if you know anyone who literally ran themselves over with a vehicle.
Well, it's funny you say that because not me, but my grandfather And there's just something about that age 3 and 4, you know. And this story has actually been told on Kankakee Podcast already. So if you search for the episode 14, Franklin Weber, you'll hear this story. But he was not all the way over, but had his leg run over by a tractor.
Oof. And,
you know, we're talking in the 1930s.
Yes.
So this ain't no modern day tractor with rubber tires. This is, got steel wheels, no rubber on the, And somehow he, walked and everything. They, they were able to repair it. But anyway, so there is that.
Okay.
But anyway, it sounds like you have that experience.
I have a similar experience, but it wasn't a tractor.
It's a common theme, I guess, on the podcast.
Yeah. So what it was so growing up, we had all these vehicles that didn't work. And so we would, sit our Sanford and Son, and so my dad was kind of a lot like Fred Sanford, kind of thing. And it was always junk coming to our house or whatever. So anyway, so we have all these vehicles.
Did he sell like Fred too?
No, he didn't sell anything.
Well, what the heck? He could have at least sold. And
it was always this. Okay, well, we're gonna do, and we never did type thing. So anyway,
I know what you're saying.
So we would get in these vehicles and pretend that we were driving. Using your imagination, kids, being kids, etc.
Oh yeah, I did that all the time as a kid.
Yeah. And so my middle brother and I, he's 3 years my senior, got the wild hair that we would play in the full-size conversion van that we had that actually was operational.
Oh no. Did you guys know that?
We knew.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Because we rode in it. I mean, that was like our family vehicle.
Okay.
So, and of course, vehicles didn't have the safety features they have on them today. And you can imagine where the story's going. So, so we were tussling about in this van, and somehow the gear selector level gets pulled, and the transmission gets engaged, and the van begins to roll. Well, my brother was a little bit older and bigger than I am, and so he jumps out of the moving van, and they had those ladders on the back so that you could climb.
I remember
that?
Yes,
yeah. And so he ran around the back to grab this ladder to attempt to pull the van backwards, to keep it from rolling. Watch too much Superman and all that.
Too much cartoons as well. Yeah.
I, on the other hand, wasn't quite as fortunate. I ended up falling out of the van, and I hit they have those metal steps, with the grates and so forth.
Yeah.
So I hit that step and started to tumble down the hill. Well, of course, this van is following behind me. And so my head ends up in one of the trenches because a few days before this, there were torrential downpours, and we lived up on a hill, and so the sand was washed away, and there were little trenches there. So my head went into one of these trenches, and then the van came and ran over my head, kind of squeezed a little bit like an accordion.
Did the tires run over your head?
Yeah.
What?
The tire,
and you're sitting right in front of me right now.
Yeah. Well, and that's because it was tucked in that little trench, and so it basically, this you all can't see this, but this groove here, it basically just ran over that. So it didn't squish my head. Plus, with the sand, there was some give. It wasn't like it was on top of the gravel. If it was on top of the gravel, my head would have exploded. It would have killed me. So anyway, and then the van just kind of rolls and parks itself on the side of the hill. And I still, whenever I tell this story or think about it, I can feel the pain of this, not only a throbbing headache.
I was going to say, yeah.
But, I remember my eyes just rolling around like this. And I liken the sensation I had all over my body to when you hit your funny bone.
Oh, yeah.
It was that feeling multiplied by about 1,000. It was very uncomfortable. Ooh. And there was this numbing tinglingness all over my body.
Yeah.
And I kept screaming, "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry, Dad."
Was he even around?
He was in the house.
He was. Okay.
And it was crazy. Like years later, we found stories or rumors that he ran me over and they wanted my mom to press charges and this and that. And oh, by the way, all of this happened on Mother's Day.
Oh my gosh. Oh man.
Yeah. So talk about being a difficult kid for my mom.
Your poor mother. Your poor mother.
Yeah. And so what ended up happening from that is and I spent well over a month. It had to be, well, maybe not well over, about 34 days between Riverside and Cook County, which is now Stroger in Chicago. I had 2 surgeries. I had a lacerated liver when I was at Riverside, and I kept getting worse. I was swelling, I was jaundiced, and all this kind of stuff. And they realized I had the lacerated liver, but they didn't have any. There was no ped specialist or anything here at Riverside at the time, and so they didn't have the capability to take care of me. So I got shipped to Stroger, which was then Cook County, and within 24 hours of me arriving, I was on the surgery table. They actually got permission, and I think I can say this now because we're past the statute of limitations, but they got permission to operate over the phone from my parents.
What?
It was that dire that they had to get in there. But all of that revealed something that I had a birth defect, the twisting of the intestines, which normally shows up when you're about 1.5, 2 years old.
So what exactly is
I can't tell you what it's called. I think it's called vulvovenous or something on that order, but it's
so
basically your intestines twist on top of themselves
whenever they want. Or
well, it happens, and then they start to choke themselves so that you can't have bowel movements.
Oh
man,
that sounds awful.
Yeah. But it shows up when you're a kid so that they can correct it early on. I had a rare version of that would have gone undetected and would have killed me when I was an adolescent. So they got in there, got that corrected, dealt with the leaking of the bile from the lacerated liver.
And did that just come from the laceration? Did that come from?
They think it came from the fall when I hit that metal step. They think that the impact is
that makes
what
sense.
may have caused that. Had a bruise on the brain, obviously.
Yeah.
And so even today, when I act a little funny or whatever, I blame that accident. I forget things or, you get it. So
at least you have an excuse.
Yeah,
I don't. So. I just, I'm just like, I got nothing. I don't have an excuse. I don't have no brain injuries or, I can't say, oh, my mom smoked, when she was pregnant with me or anything like that. I can't, I can't say that either.
There's lots of stuff I can say. Hopefully nobody's listening. My mother's not listening or whatever.
Man, but, Mom she's going to beat you the next time she sees you.
I told you I was a problem child.
Yeah.
So, but so they were able to correct those things and that. And
so did your skull crack? It was just a
no, I think it just squaz it, and I kind of have a little funny shaped head. If you ever pay close attention, it's a little elongated, and I think it just squaz it, and I think that's what.
So
it's
if anyone ever wants a elongated head, they just got to get run over.
Just run yourself over,
but make sure it's on top of sand.
Yes, sand, and it's nice and soft, and make sure there's a trench because if you run right over it, it's going to be like an exploding watermelon.
Yeah.
So that is probably one of the most interesting things that happened to me. And I still have all the scars to prove it. I often joke that I was split open from stem to stern, and it's just it was it was a difficult time on my family because I came within 24 hours of death. I mean, it was very, very bad.
And this would have been in what,
1991.
Okay.
So
I was gonna say it was either late 80s or early 90s, maybe.
Yep. Yep. Mother's Day of 91. Yeah. So it was horrific, but it turned out to be one of the best things that could have ever happened, at least for my mom, because otherwise I would not be here today. Now, that may be a source of irritation for a great many other people, but I know that she's happy. At least that's what she tells me anyway. So
yeah, and hopefully she's telling the truth.
Yeah,
I'm sure she is.
Yeah. So,
wow.
And I'm sure my kids are, they probably are glad that they're here too.
I would think so. I would sure hope so. My gosh.
Yeah. So from that, then obviously I did what everyone else did in terms of going to school.
Well, what was it like growing up in Hopkins Park? Because I don't know that many people, and I told Kent when he was on too that eventually I'm gonna do kind of some special episodes on the Pembroke Township area, just because I know there's so many people in this county like me that just don't know much about it other than hearing, there's not much there. That's kind of, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. No. That's just that's just what I was told. I'm not saying that myself. It's just, that's what I was told by people.
Exactly.
So,
well, to your point, so when I was growing up, we had dirt roads and all that kind of thing. We always referred to 13,000 as the blacktop because, it was the main street that came in when you're coming in from Kankakee, Momentum, those areas from the north and ran. But so we'd call that the blacktop. There were other paved roads, though, like Cemetery Road, which is 4,000 south. That was paved. 16,000 North Hopkins Road. So there were some paved roads, but a lot of them were dirt roads, eventually became gravel. Some of them became chip and tar. We had, there was at the three-way on 15,000, there was a gas station there, and there used to be a convenience store years ago. At the four-way, everyone knows the four-way, there was the four-way deli when I was growing up. The gas station was not there. We had a police force when I was growing up. Matter of fact, Lake Clay Butler was one part of the police force back then. We had the public library now did not exist. The public library when I was growing up was in the house that's at Martin Luther King Park. There's a 2-story house there. Very, very small, like the smallest library ever. But that was our public library.
It's amazing that, because what's the population in Hopkins Park? Or at that time, what was it?
Well, at that time, it was 800.
Okay. So it's amazing that you even had a public library, even though it was, it wasn't a big library, but you had one.
We had one.
Yeah.
And I remember when we would do the community Black history programs and so forth, we would prepare there. Mr. Aaron Beverly would, at least I think it was Aaron Beverly. I know it's Beverly, Mr. Beverly. Aaron Beverly was a friend of mine growing up. I don't know what his first name was, but anyway, Mr. Beverly, and he did Broadway, all kinds of things, and he wrote a lot of the plays we did.
Oh, cool.
And I remember we would meet in that room, and he had a little theater studio type thing at his house that I went to one time when I was younger. He's since passed years ago. But yeah, and we, Leggett's Funeral Home's been there forever. The park, of course. Mundy Brothers was still in business when I grew up. They were an asphalt company. Matter of fact, the road I grew up on, Gamble Road, named after Old Man Gamble, at the top of the road was where Mundy Brothers sat. And they actually had basketball courts back in the day, and a lot of times people would come have basketball tournaments there and that kind of thing. At our house, we had a lot of barbecues and such, and so we had a basketball rim, and so people would come over and we play ball, and that's pretty much all you did was you walked around, you rode bikes, you played basketball. And even though we played video games and stuff, many of us didn't have the money to afford video games. So we usually we had gaming consoles, like we had the Nintendo, we got the Super Nintendo, and we got the PlayStation. my oldest brother, who had moved out, but when he came back, he left his Sega Genesis.
Oh man!
So you know, like, so we played Sonic the Hedgehog and all that.
There you go.
The Hedgehog. But you know, and that's pretty much all you do out there, because there really isn't much else to do. My dad was a fisher, and so we went fishing a lot as a kid. I went hunting with him a couple of times.
Was there places to fish nearby in Hopkins Park? You probably have to go.
You kind of have to go. Well, you go to some of the back creeks and stuff, like out by St. Anne and in Iroquois County, or
you go to Indiana.
Yeah. Never went to Willis Slough because that cost money, so we didn't do that.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was pretty much life. We had a garden growing up, so that was a lot of work and a lot of time. Everything was done by hand, so we pulled all the weeds by hand. It was a big garden. I mean, you're not talking just, you know, a couple rows. I mean, we had there's a lot of, you know, we watered it. We turned it over, so we didn't have a tiller, and so it was shovels, and that was our tilling when we grew up. And we had hose, you know, garden hose. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was very, very interesting growing up. Lots of fond memories, and then some not so good memories. But that's with any family, and that's with any.
It doesn't matter where you live.
We spent a lot of time at Bible Witness Camp. Bible Witness Camp has been a haven for many young people for many, many years. And they had the Awana program, which stands for Approved Workmen Are Not Ashamed. It's a verse out of 2 Timothy, I believe, if I still have my scripture references correct. And it's geared towards Bible memorization. And they back then,
how does one memorize the Bible?
you used to Bible verses, I guess I should say, not the whole thing, but you know, you used to have to be able to quote verbatim what the verse said, the reference, which is the book and the chapter, and the verse. So, for example, the big famous one everyone knows, John 3:16, for God so loved the world, you have to be able to quote those. And so I somehow developed a very good memory. And I did exceptionally well with the Awana program and learning the Bible verses, the books of the Bible, etc. And I would win many awards and all that. We used to have Bible quiz offs in Bloomington Normal and the whole thing. And it was very, very good. And then there were these summer camps that they offered. Day camp if you were young, overnight camp if you were, I believe you had to be 3rd grade or above, or 3rd grade to 8th grade to participate in overnight camp, where you pack for a week and you go live in cabins, you know, out at the camp. And then
where was the camp?
So it's in what they call North Hopkins. I believe it's 17,000 is the main road, and it's a little wooded area. There's a sign that says Bible Witness Camp. A bunch of pine trees that my parents planted when they were kids.
Wow.
In that group.
Okay.
And then
because it's been around that long.
Yeah. And because they started Bible Witness Camp out here in Hopkins Park full time in 1955.
Okay.
They first started coming out here, from what I understand, in 47, and it was tied to the Bible Witness Mission in Chicago. So ever since then, they've had, you know, these Awana clubs, and just really trying to teach people about the Bible and Jesus and God and all that, to build a foundation, character and morals and values. So
looks like it worked for you.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. It certainly shaped who I am today, and many people. And it gave you a place to go that was a positive place. You know, you weren't getting into trouble there. You say your verses. We have what's called a sugar shack, where, you know, you say so many verses, you get all these points, and you could use those points to buy candy.
Okay.
You know, or pop or whatever. And it's like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'd get into that.
Mm-hmm.
I love candy.
Yeah.
Who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. what's something? What else do you know about Hopkins Park as far as history goes?
Well, so I love studying history and so forth, but Hopkins Park is a very interesting area, and Pembroke Township for that matter. I believe the township is Pembroke Township that was founded by Pap Tedder, who is an interesting fellow as well. And they came up from the South, I believe North Carolina and up and around through Indiana and all that. And there's actually a cemetery that has, and it's in Indiana because they stopped in Indiana before they got to the Pembroke area.
Okay.
At least that caravan of folks. And there's the Tedders, the Greenlees, there's a couple other staple names that are still prevalent here in Kankakee County that are all part of that group.
I was
going
to say because there's a well-known Tedder that I've heard a name of recently. I thought, and maybe.
Well, you've got Alderman Tedder.
Okay, that's who I was thinking of. Is he affiliated?
He is.
Okay, yes, that's what I was like. There's a Tedder I just heard of.
Yeah, he's a descendant.
Of course, he just stepped down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That's him. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And then my family's been around for a very long time. If you go to the past, the Lee name is actually a married name of my paternal grandmother. We're not really Lees because my dad had a different father than his siblings. Okay. So there's that. And then our history goes back to, on my dad's side, to like the 1930s, 40s time frame, maybe the 50s. And then my mom's side, we go back, it goes back a little further than that on my dad's side. But on my mom's side, I think we go back to like the 30s or 40s or somewhere in there too. So we go back a little ways. The village of Hopkins Park hasn't been around nearly as long as Pembroke Township. And I guess he would be my step grandfather or my grandfather or something. Anyway, I don't know. But they called him Mr. Al. His name was Al Venardo. He was one of the founding trustees of Pembroke Township. So there's a little bit of not Pembroke Township, Village of Hopkins Park. Village of Hopkins Park. Yeah. And so there's a little bit of a connection there. And of course, all the people who knew him and knew all of that, they're all passed away or passing away. Mm-hmm. And I found out recently, my best friend growing up, Kelvin Thomas Jr., his grandmother was actually the attending nurse to Mr. Al after his car accident, and he was immobilized. He was paralyzed. And I had no idea, but it wasn't years later, we're all talking and stuff. And I happened to bring up a family member, and she said, wait a minute. And then we go down the line. She said, well,
Wow.
And so, yeah, so it's cool. Yeah.
It's just cool to know that, like some of those founding names are still around, like Tedder. Mm-hmm. And
they are.
And especially considering he was alderman.
Yes.
It's so still involved kind of heavily in what's happening in the area, in the county. So.
And there's a lot of history back there. Like if you ever, and you can Google it, the Lost Sands of Kankakee County talks a lot about Pembroke Township. There was at one point, Mills College was out there. They had, I know there was, like when my mom was growing up, they had this little club called the Shady Grove, and they'd have these dance offs and so forth. And she used to win dance competitions, like way back when.
Oh, okay.
They had a laundromat. They've had, lots and lots. And like I said, even when I was growing up, we had a police force, and that none of that exists today. And it's just very disheartening to see that a lot of the churches, even that I was active in, you're seeing the buildings start to decay, and some of them are some of the churches that have been out there, some of them are vacant, overrun with weeds, and nature is taking over in that. So it is a little concerning, but there's still a lot of great people out there. The population is shifting. There's a lot more Hispanic folks that are there than were there when I was growing up. They have their ranches, and there's a restaurant on the 4-way now that's a taco place and that kind of thing. But it is. It is a great place. Fond memories. We still have property out there and stuff. So I'm out there frequently. And yeah.
That's
one of my pet projects is on out in the field out there. I grow hops, so I got some hops out there.
Oh, do you brew?
I don't, but
so
my
what do you
friend does.
Oh, so you give him the hops.
And so we're working with some of the nano brewers and all that kind of thing, and hopefully we'll be able to build some kind of partnership. And,
really?
Yeah.
What size is your field of hops?
Oh, it's only in acres. It's but it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of plants. There's over 1,000 plants.
Yeah. How does it? How do you grow hops? I've never heard anyone talk about.
Well, they grow vertically. So you have to build a trellis, especially if it's something that big. It's got to be a trellis system of some kind. So it's basically telephone poles and cable wire is what it is.
Interesting.
And then you tie ropes. I'm going to call them ropes because I'm not going to get into technical terms, but you tie ropes from the wire, and then you clip them into the soil. And then as the plants grow up, they're perennials. So as they grow up, you just wrap them around the rope, and then they'll train themselves to go all the way up, and then they'll produce the cones. All female plants. You do not want male hop plants because they're seedy. You just want the flowery plants. So
I didn't even know there was such thing as a male and female plant. This is how smart you are and how unsmart or not smart I am. So
you didn't learn that in biology.
Okay. Biology, I almost failed. So I think Ken Clipp, who was my teacher for biology at Mac, I think he was just nice to me because he knew my uncle real well back in the day. He taught him and coached him in track. I think he was helping me out, because I was terrible at biology. I forgot that, and it is terrible because I come from a farm family, so that's even worse. Yeah, my heritage just went out the window. Oh goodness, my father's rolling his eyes right now.
Yeah,
he's listening.
He's listening.
He might be. So I didn't realize that's how hops. I didn't know they went up vertically, and they're like a vine almost.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. And it's neat. It's different. It's a great way. Like for me, I love to be outside, and to get away from all the noise and all the drama, and just be out there and playing with my plants. It's like
that's cool. That's really cool.
So that's something a lot of people like. I've talked about it in the past, but a lot of people don't know that about me. So that's kind of one of those neat things that. Or I think it's neat anyway.
We have the exclusive. Jake Lee.
Yeah.
He's a hop grower.
I am. Yeah. So.
We'll have a special Jake Lee brew of some kind, an IPA or
I love IPAs.
See, there you go. It's gonna be. I don't know. There has to be a cool name you can come up with to kind of play around on. Auditor,
Oh yeah.
And I kind of imagine that if you did play around with that name, I feel like if you did include something about being an auditor, it would have to be an IPA because I don't know, for some reason I picture a beer that's just going to knock you on your butt.
Oh yeah, it's got to be bold and full of body and
because you're the auditor.
Even though usually auditors are considered kind of glib and boring.
But it's such a the term itself.
Yeah.
To me, it's very
got gravitas.
It does.
Yeah.
It's very like you get. I don't know. I hear the word auditor and I'm like, oh
yeah.
Like I just kind of straighten up. I just kind of straighten up and be like, oh. Because who wants to get audited?
It sucks the life out of a room.
That's what I mean.
I never, whenever I'm in a place, I would never tell people what I actually did because I knew the reaction I get. And I remember, I don't remember if it was Grapes and Hops or something. Anyway, I was at a place like that, and it was a kind of a meet and greet type thing. And someone said, "Hey, what do you do?" I said, "Oh, I work for the county. This and that." Oh, okay, that's cool. But what do you do? Well, I work in the auditor's office. I just keep trying to avoid using that term. And then when I say, well, I'm the county auditor. Oh, well.
I know nothing about this one thing that I wasn't there. I swear.
And then they start telling me about their taxes and how they're trying to get things in order and this and that. I'm like, look, I'm not the IRS. I'm not coming to, but it does. That's the reaction you get.
That's why I say it has to be an IPA, man.
Yeah. I agree.
It's got to be something that knocks, knocks you on your butt. So, you get into high school. Was it then that you decided to, because I know you're a Navy veteran. Yes. I do remember that about you.
Yes.
When did that come into play for you?
Interestingly enough, so my grandpa was in the Navy.
Okay.
And there is
during maybe World War II?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. He was a radioman. I don't know much about his time in service. I do know that he only completed the 11th grade. So I'm assuming he was drafted. Did
they draft people in high school?
I'm not sure.
I mean, he could have,
but somehow
he could have faked his
he may
his
have.
age,
I don't know. He was,
because that was a thing.
It was. It was. And but he's a little project of mine that I'm going to start because I want to know more about his service history.
Did you ever meet him? Was he alive when
I was 5.5, something like that when he died.
Okay.
So I knew him
a little bit,
and he actually came to visit me when I was at Cook County every single day because my parents couldn't afford to come up here and the vehicle wasn't reliable enough for that.
Yeah,
and
it was reliable to roll, but not roll all the way to Cook County Hospital.
That's right.
Yeah,
and so he came every day to visit me. My dad was his only child.
Oh wow!
So so we were his only grandchildren biologically. So he came to visit every day. And what's funny is by the time I was out of the hospital, so when I was learning I wasn't learning to walk again, but I was healing enough where I could walk.
And and you had to do therapy at that point,
And he would take me and we'd walk around the nurse's station, all that. I'd have my IV and that. But he'd have me walk different ways. And so he taught me how to walk like Cap Calloway. And, when he'd do Minnie the Moocher and he'd have the finger down and kind of the pimp and stroll type thing. And so I come out of the hospital.
This little pimp.
And I'm walking like that. And my mother she's like, what do you have my son doing? And so it's just, just things like that. So.
Like, what did you, send him up to the, Chicago hospital. He comes out and he's
But but speaking of that, one of the fondest memories I do have of that time is there was a little girl who I don't know her name. I don't remember her. I don't remember anything about her except the fact that she would not eat. And she
in the hospital?
In the hospital, yeah.
Okay.
She was down the hall.
Okay.
And somehow we struck up a friendship. And I would talk to her and encourage her that she needs to eat if she wants to get better, this and that, and so eventually she started eating. And I was the only person she would eat for. She wouldn't eat for her parents, her nurse, anyone. It's very, very bizarre. And
it's the magic touch.
Yeah.
You got that magic touch there, Jake. That's really what it is.
And so, but she ended up getting better and she got out of there before I did,
Wow.
And it's like, but I never heard from them again. I have no idea.
Man.
I would have obviously no way of being able to, but I would be so curious as to what her life turned out to be.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what she was in there for or anything either, but
you just know she wouldn't eat.
She wouldn't eat.
Huh.
Yeah.
You don't remember seeing like casts or anything like that?
I don't remember that. My mom probably would. would know a little more, but I do remember her, and I remember feeding her, but I don't remember anything else beyond that.
Interesting.
So, it's just weird. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It is kind of weird, but still, it's funny the things that you remember that make an impact on you at that age.
It does.
You know?
Yeah. And going and beyond. But anyway, getting back to my grandfather. So he was in the Navy. There was a painting, which I have in my house now, of him in uniform. And it's so funny that there's a watermark near his eye. It makes it look like he was crying. In the painting. It's just so weird. But anyway.
And that was done on purpose? Or
no, I think it was an accident somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
So I have it framed nicely and everything to try to preserve it. But that is where I got the idea that I wanted to be a Navy captain. Now, I didn't know the difference between officer and enlisted and all that kind of thing back then.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be a Navy captain. But I had no idea how to do that. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. But then that left me because growing up, I always wanted to be a preacher. Yeah, I always wanted to be a preacher, and it stems from a situation that happened when I was in the hospital, which I won't go into detail with. Maybe off air we'll talk about.
Okay, sure, I understand.
But I stem. So I wanted to be a preacher in that, and I'd wear suits to school every day and all this kind of stuff. By the time I got to high school, though, life started changing, and then you do things and all that. And so I actually started preaching. Actually, I started preaching very young. I did my first sermon. I want to say I was 16-ish or something, where you get what's called a license to preach in the Baptist church. They give you this license where the pastor signs it and the deacons and all this kind of thing.
Wow.
And you do your trial sermon, which and I did mine that.
And do you do that in front of the other?
In front of the entire congregation.
Oh, in front of the entire congregation.
It's the first time you ever give a message.
But I'm sure you get judged or graded on it, right?
Kind of. It's very informal
by the preachers.
But they do kind of rate you, whatever, and then if they license you, then you basically become an understudy. I was always a bookworm and kind of nerdy, and so I'd go to all the conferences and I'd read the great authors and theologians like Spurgeon and F.F. Bruce and all of these. I was always fascinated with people like, you probably shouldn't talk about him, but the late Ravi Zacharias, who was caught up in a lot of scandal lately post-mortem, but he was brilliant. And so people like him, people like Os Guinness and all these folks, I studied them. And so I studied the Bible, and I would go and study other. But anyway, so I became very, very astute and substantive, I hope, in my messages and so forth. But then, and then I actually ended up getting ordained after I turned 18. And I did that for a little while, and then I kind of retired, I guess. Now I consider
after 18.
I was in my 20s.
Okay.
So but still, it's kind of like I might do a message every now and then, or do something special, but it's not like what I normally do. Mm-hmm. So yeah. But anyway, so when I was 18, the opportunity to go to college did not exist for me. My folks couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it, and I had a child on the way at the time. My oldest daughter, Brianna.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 18.
You were 18.
So I was turning 19 though, because she was born right before my 19th birthday.
Okay.
And so obviously I had a decision to make. And so I decided to go to the Navy. I enlisted as a religious program specialist, and went to boot camp in June of 2005, June 28th. And that was that. My first duty station was the Naval Academy. Interestingly enough, I wanted to be a Navy captain. And here I end up getting stationed at the Naval Academy, where they produce officers. So never knew it existed. Obviously, you don't hear about those kind of things in Hopkins Park, St. Anne,
No.
And so, but I met so many great people, had lots of good friends. I was responsible for the budget for our division. I did memorial affairs, so I coordinated funeral services. My claim to fame is Admiral Flucky, who they called him Lucky Flucky, highly decorated submariner. He was cremated. For his service, there was no one to drive his urn. So I put his urn in the back seat of my car, and I was the hearse.
Wow.
Driving Flucky in the back. Lucky Flucky in the back.
Flucky.
Just chilling. And we inurned him over at the columbarium.
Yeah.
But it was one of the greatest times. I met so many cool people. I came after Admiral Stockdale had died because he died in August. I didn't arrive until October. But we had Vice Admiral Meade, Admiral Lawrence, who his daughter Wendy was the astronaut. All of these folks, I was able to participate or even coordinate their services. I literally ran into the CNO, Admiral Mullen, at the time, in the basement of the chapel, which the crypt of John Paul Jones is in the basement of the chapel at the Naval Academy as well. So that's really cool. And all his medals and awards and everything. And,
that's
his sarcophagus.
Cool. That's a pretty cool job then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then from there, I went to the USS Enterprise, the first nuclear aircraft carrier in the world, 8 nuclear reactors. I had a chief at the time who used to say, this is 4.4 acres of sovereign U.S. territory.
That sounds pretty accurate.
And just to give you an idea of the scope, I tell people so if you take an aircraft carrier and you turn it vertical, it would be taller than the Sears Tower or the Willis Tower now. So that just kind of gives you an idea of these things. They're massive. Anyway, I ended up being pulled off of the ship to what's called an individual augmentee billet, and they sent me to Afghanistan in 2008. And I served there with the 101st Airborne Division with both Task Force Lifeliner and at the division level, where I traveled throughout the Combined Joint Operations Area, or SJOA for short, to provide religious support or protection for the chaplain, because the chaplain's a non-combatant. So I carried the weapon, carried the gear, to make sure the chaplain didn't get killed. And that was probably one of my toughest assignments.
I would imagine so.
But it was certainly one of the most humbling, and the military was one of the best parts of my life. It really, really was one of the best decisions I made, because I earned my associate's and my first bachelor's degree while on active duty. So that was very, very fortunate for me to be able to do that. It was a blessing. So
did you do that online, or were you taking classes on base? Did they have those?
It was a combination.
Okay.
Mostly online via distance learning, but there were some courses that I took on base that I got credit for and so forth. But mostly distance learning.
Did you become a chaplain?
No, I never became because you have to have a master's degree in divinity or theology or something. You have to have a master's degree to be a chaplain. I had nothing.
Right. Yeah, you went in right. You went in with nothing. It sounds like you got as close as you possibly could.
Oh yeah,
though.
yeah.
I mean, you were guarding the chaplain.
You were guarding him, yeah. And a lot of enlisted people, because chaplains are commissioned officers, and they don't feel comfortable talking to a commissioned, and so they'll unload on you. Mm-hmm. And so I got a lot of conversations, and I'd always, the things, and you filter what was important and serious. You always push to the chaplain and said, hey, sir, or ma'am, I think you need to, but some of the other stuff that you could handle, you just handle that stuff. So
sure.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service.
Oh, my pleasure.
That's something neat to carry along with you. I don't know. It just sounds so cool to be like, I was the guy protecting the chaplain. You know.
I'm going to show you a photo that I have. It's a picture of me. The chaplain and I were providing coverage. It was after a horrific day where combat outpost Walat got overrun by the Taliban. It was an ambush situation. We lost a total of 10 airmen, sailors, soldiers, and 1 Marine in Helmand province, which is southern Afghanistan, in one day. It was the worst killing, I think, up to that point. and that was 2008. There's a picture of me after we traveled all day and we're doing all this stuff, and I'm in a chair. I've got my M16 next to me. I'm sitting like this, and with my hands in my lap folded, and there's a light above me shining down. And so it looks like I'm praying, and it looks like this holy light or whatever.
Yeah, but you weren't
And the
praying?
chaplain took the picture.
Uh-huh.
No, I was sleeping. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
But it is such a cool picture. And he's like, Jake, I could not help myself. And he would call me Jake, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, I couldn't help myself. That was too good a photo not to get. And I was so glad he shared it with me. And I still have it. So I'll have to show it to you.
That's
you know?
really cool. It's funny that you weren't actually praying though, and it just looked like it just that's how Jake sleeps, just with his hands folded like he's praying.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So anyway, yeah, it was it was great. So after the military.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you did gain your associates and your bachelor's, what was that in some type of mathematics, economics? I don't know what you know. Well, obviously we're going to get into the auditor thing here eventually, but
business administration.
Okay.
What I did. So you do accounting, you do management.
That's what I meant to say, accounting.
Organizational behavior, different things of that nature. But my other degrees came later, post-military. And a matter of fact, I just finished up my second master's degree, which is in accounting, because I do want to attempt the CPA exams, even though they are terrible, and or I guess I should say reattempt. But nonetheless, when I became the auditor, though, I only had an MBA. So I had an MBA and then my other two degrees. So I earned two other degrees while I was in office, just because even though I knew accounting and auditing, all this stuff, I wanted to be the expert in those subjects. And so I went and got a couple more degrees.
I knew that you were in school recently.
Yeah.
And so you just completed that like this last couple months. Because
Sunday.
I was going to say, because I remember, I remember when I had first texted you, I don't know if it was a couple months ago, or at least a month ago, if not longer. You're like, hey, hit me up more like this time because I'm
drowning.
Right.
That's probably what I said.
Yeah. Like you're like, I think you said I have school or something until such and such a date. So
that was my master's in accounting. Yeah. So that's complete. Now,
so that's what you just complete. Now you got to take the CPA.
Yeah.
And is that an Illinois thing or is that a nationwide thing?
But you're licensed through your state board. So assuming I pass all four parts of the exam and then the ethics part, then there's a few more steps that have to take place before I'd be able to hold myself out to the public as a certified public accountant. I don't know that I will ever work in public accounting.
Yeah.
But
you're obviously not going to be auditor forever.
No, this will be my last term. But but I think having that credential is good. And just a fact, statistical fact, there are less than 1% of the accountants in the United States are African American. So that's a very exclusive club, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I would like to, I know whenever I go and talk to people, young people and stuff like that, particularly minorities, and I talk about accounting, no one says they want to be an accountant when they grow up, you know? No one says they want to be an auditor.
Not too many.
Because all auditors are accountants, but not all accountants are auditors. But
yeah, it's a weird, it's an interesting thing, which I'm hoping to learn more about here.
Yeah.
But,
so anyway,
so you get out of the military, or you get out of the Navy. Excuse me.
Yep.
And then. Where do we go from there?
So I end up back home. By this time, I was married with 2 children, and we moved back here, lived with family for a little while because you got to get your bearings and so forth. And I started working for Hoekstra Transportation Now, I often joke when I started there, I didn't know the difference between a kingpin and a bowling pin. It's like, and yet here I am going to go work for a trucking company. Okay,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah. What did you do for? What did you do for?
So
Hoekstra?
I started out as a special projects coordinator. That was my title. And basically, the owner of the company at the time, Steve Hoekstra, would just give me special projects, this and that. And so after about 2 months, they made me a driver manager. At the time, we had a Northeastern operation called Martini Transportation and Northeast United States.
I recognize that name.
And so, I still have a pen to this day. I don't know
that says Martini on it.
Yeah, and it still writes.
Oh wow!
But yeah, it's
I remember
seeing.
I remember seeing that name
with
a lot.
The blue.
Yes, I was going to say it was blue. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I was their driver manager for a while, and then it was. I want to say it was like the first week of May. It was a Friday. Steve came to me and he said, you're doing a great job, this and that. Our safety position's been open. I think you'd be good for it, and offered me the position as the director of safety and recruiting. I accepted it. On Monday, Officer Clayton Roth from the Illinois Department of Transportation showed up, showed me his badge, and said, we are here to do an audit. And I need this list of things. and so I've been in the trucking industry for like 2 minutes, and now I'm the safety director, and I'm getting audited by the government.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Needless to say, it did not go well.
That's not good.
We failed, and so there are 3 levels of safety ratings. It is unsatisfactory, conditional, satisfactory. So we were reduced from satisfactory to conditional. A lot of the things so some things had already started when I took that role on, but we brought it all the way through, like electronic logs and, actual log auditing, brought the driver qualification files up to date, a lot of things we did, changed some of our hiring practices, etc. And so by December, we got re-audited, which usually doesn't happen, but we were basically begging the DOT, and Steve and I went down to a meeting with the FMCSA and others. Anyway.
I'm surprised you usually don't get re-audited, because don't they want to check to see if you've complied?
Right. But they usually don't do it in such a short time period.
Oh, do they wait like another year or so?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we basically, we got audited again. And we were successful in that audit. They had a few findings, but nothing material. And our safety rating was raised from conditional back to satisfactory, all within 12 months. And so
you worked your butt off.
We worked hard, and it was a team effort. I mean, everybody was on board with getting that safety rating. And Steve was very, very supportive. Steve always told me that safety comes first. I mean, there are some loads that have $700 reschedule fees and different things like that. But if a driver's jammed up on hours of service, or if there's a breakdown or anything like that, he said, we have to eat the load. I mean, we cannot jeopardize their safety. And having that tone at the top and that perspective from him made all the difference in the world. And people don't realize how important it is to have a good owner of a trucking company, a good executive at the top. If you have someone who doesn't care about safety, all they care about is pushing the revenue, you're going to have a toxic environment, but not so at Hoekstra Transportation. And I was very grateful for that. And I learned so much in that position. Then I left, worked for Great Wide Truckload Management for about 9 months, traveled the country. I was a safety guy, but I started out with the Midwest, and then I had the Pacific Northwest, and then they fired a guy, and then I ended up with the Northeast.
Oh my!
So I was always on the road, always in a plane. I was a diamond member with Hilton Hotels. And I ended up coming back to Hoekstra as the operations and safety guy. So they combined the two positions, and I held that role for 3 years, and until I ran for auditor. And again, I can't speak enough about the Hoekstra family. They were supportive. Like there was no guarantee that I would lose. Like I thought I was going to lose, but they were so supportive. And when I won, they were supportive of me transitioning from the whole time. And it's like, I mean, you can't beat that.
No.
I mean
especially since they're going to lose you again.
Yeah.
You know, obviously they liked you enough because they hired you again after you know. So, I mean.
So it was great. And I don't think I would have. And quite frankly, I was encouraged. Like Steve himself even encouraged me.
Well, I was going to say, what planted that seed for running for auditor? Did someone plant the seed, or did you plant the seed yourself? Or are you just kind of like, you know what? Let's just try it. You know.
Well, I actually was recruited and approached by the party about another political position, which I'll leave that out because whatever. That didn't work out. I wasn't the pick. So then I was approached about auditor. Now I knew nothing about auditor. I didn't even know we had an auditor. And I certainly didn't know what they did. So the first thing I do is I grab statutes and I read and I say, oh, okay, well, I can do that. And the pay wasn't much less than, I mean, it was less. Well, actually,
than what you were making.
It was less than what it was actually significantly less now that I think about it. But it was close enough that it wasn't detrimental. So I'm like, okay, well, I could do that because, you know, it'll be something different. It'll expand my skill set, and I probably won't win anyway. So whatever. At least I can do it. But I end up winning. And
then you're like, oh, man, I really have to. Well, so you had you sort of had auditing experience or getting audited for safety.
Right.
Per se.
Right.
But, you know,
but not financial statements.
Yeah. So I was going to say, Kankakee County Auditor is all about finances. It's not about safety, right?
Correct. And so, but it's about operations as well. So I knew operations.
Okay.
But we don't audit the financial statements. We're internal auditors. And so we're looking at process. We're looking at compliance. And I knew all about process and compliance from my safety days.
Okay.
But with accounting specifically, you have to have technical knowledge. And even though I knew how to read and understand financial statements, I took 4 accounting classes up to that point. I wasn't an expert. And so what I needed to do, the first thing that I did is I pulled all of it and governmental accounting is even more difficult to understand.
I would imagine.
You're dealing with fund accounting, modified accrual basis. Your private sector is typically accrual basis of accounting, or they use cash basis. But government is much, much different. There's a ton of funds, and it's
coming from all over the place.
And they're coming from all over, federal, state, et cetera. So there was a lot to learn very quickly. And so I pulled the Government Accounting Standards Board or GASB statements. I pulled all the statutes I could. I read as many books as I could and just really got myself educated. And then I enrolled in school. And I earned my second bachelor's degree, which was in accounting from Governor State. So, and then I went on to earn my second master's degree while obviously trying to improve the office, start different initiatives, you know, like our internship program and all that kind of thing. So hopefully I've been effective during some of that stuff. But it was all about becoming the expert. And at the end of the day, I wanted to elevate what the office had become over the years to what the office should be, or what at least I thought it should be. And, we worked on that and worked very hard at that.
So I guess now's the time.
Sure.
Now's the good time to really get into the nitty-gritty. So what is the Kankakee County Auditor? I mean, you just kind of said it, but to explain it further, what exactly do you do?
Okay, excellent. Well, to answer that, I'm going to start out with, we haven't always had an auditor. So there's a population threshold of 75,000 people before the office is created by law. If you are less than 75,000, then you have to have a referendum and the people must vote to create the office. That's how it happens. After you hit 75,000, the office is created and an election is held. Kankakee County elected their first auditor in 1964, I believe. It was Bob. Oh, what was his name? His name escapes me now. But anyway, very first auditor, 4-year term. And I think it was Kel. But 4-year term. Second auditor was a 4-year term. Third auditor, Dick Winkle, which a lot of your listeners probably know that name, was auditor for 29 years.
That's a long time.
The longest serving auditor.
Was he the one before you then?
No, there were 2 others.
There was 2 others after him.
Jim Dunn after him, Steve McCarty, who's now the finance director, and Debbie Woodruff, and then me.
Okay.
So I'm number 6. And the auditor is empowered by the state law. So the statute you have the statute that creates the office, and then the statute gives certain duties, powers, and functions to the office. We're responsible for auditing what we call claims, which is basically the bills. And we're looking for things like the county is tax exempt, so we don't pay sales taxes. That is the reason sales taxes is a big thing, is that for every dollar you spend on sales taxes, you can't spend somewhere else, right?
Okay.
And we have seen evidence of well over $40,000 of sales taxes being paid over the years, okay, that doesn't get caught for whatever reason. And so,
that's part of your job.
That's part of our
job.
Is to find those dollars.
And it could be something as simple as, trying to think of an example, maybe like, because you audit all of the offices that are within the county.
Within the county, yes.
Right. So let's say, like the highway department.
Yes.
Let's say they buy a new truck.
Uh-huh.
Let's say they end up paying taxes on it.
Yes.
And, so that's something we would catch.
And shout out to the highway department. They have excellent records. We've done several.
My dad works for them.
Yeah.
So he's been with them for like 35 years.
Yeah. So we've done several audits with them, and they are probably one of our most supportive office or departments, and they have impeccable records. They do a very fine job, and I really like that. So we're responsible for auditing the bills, and then we recommend either payment or rejection to the county board. The authority to approve bills rests with the county board. We have no authority to stop anything.
So wait, you're saying reject?
Well, we recommend. Yeah. So
that the bill gets paid?
That it doesn't get paid.
That it doesn't get paid.
Or it does. Either one. We have that option where we can.
Because you think something's phony about it.
Correct.
Okay.
So if we find evidence of fraud, evidence of improper calculations, evidence of things where people are being paid for services they did not render, et cetera, we will recommend those be disapproved. For example, employee reimbursements is a big one. That's kind of some low-hanging fruit. And people will be people. And we have had many situations where people have tried to, or they have charged to their credit card various things that they're not entitled to have. And so we will recommend against paying that. If it's charged to a credit card, then our recommendation is that they reimburse the county because the county, Article 8 of the Illinois Constitution says, the very first line of that article, public funds, property, or credit shall be used only for public purposes. And so our philosophy is, if you say, for example, you go on to a conference, the conference starts on Sunday. If you decide to travel on Friday for that conference, Friday and Saturday, those are your days. That's not, now if the conference starts at 8 a.m. Sunday morning, you can travel on Saturday. That's your travel day. But if you're traveling 2 or 3 days before that conference starts, those are personal days. And the county does not pay for your hotel or your food for those days.
Okay.
That's just not how that works.
Okay.
Now we are on the hook for your travel day. And there's criteria for how much and all that.
Well, and it all depends on where the conference is at. Are you driving? Are you flying?
Yep. So, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But so we've pointed things out like that. We've seen things where.
So if it was in that case, like, let's say, I worked for one of the county, I was a county employee.
Sure.
I'm going to a conference, but it's, in Milwaukee. I've got friends there.
Yep.
I'm going early, 2 days beforehand. Now, if I'm going to have a couple extra nights at a hotel, then I would have to pay for that separately, not with
correct.
If I have government issued credit card or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
Because those 2 days where you're partying with your friends, for lack of a better term, those are personal days. And the government isn't responsible for your leisure. The government is responsible for anything that is work related, which is that conference. And so there's been several occasions where there's a lot of pushback on that.
Oh yeah,
most of
it
the
seems
time,
like you see that stuff in the papers all the time.
Yeah. And most of the time, the county board will approve that stuff anyway. And I'm not going to get into what their motivations are or whatever, but I've said my piece.
Right.
I'm elected by the people. I represent them, and I give what my professional opinion is on this stuff. I happen to be the only certified fraud examiner in this county as well, in terms of the county government. And so I think I have a little bit of an edge in terms of expertise on the matter. But nonetheless, it's one of those things that you expect, and it's your job as an auditor. And I had a professor. Can I say piss? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well,
that's fine.
Because I wasn't sure if I could use profanity or anything like that.
We're fine with that.
But I had a professor used to tell me, if you're not pissing somebody off, you're not doing your job. If you're the auditor, okay. So
well, I mean, it's a very sensitive, important subject.
It is.
So and it can be, honestly, I feel like it can be easy for anyone to overstep themselves, no matter how great of a person they are. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Like I said, I feel like we're all guilty of that. And sometimes when we first step over that line, we don't really realize it.
Right.
And maybe till later, then we're like, oh yeah, probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the things our office really tries to do is, sometimes mistakes happen. For example, I accidentally pulled my county card to get gas instead of my personal card. Okay, that has happened. We don't go and run to the paper or run to the board and say, oh, they're fraud. We call the person and we say, hey, this happened. Most of the time, the reaction is, oh, you know what? And they come and bring a check.
Yeah.
Right there. Because they know they messed up and they know it was an accident. And when you get a response like that, you know that that's a legitimate, but when it's
a pushback.
Yeah. You're not going to tell me what to do, or they ignore you, that kind of thing. You're like, okay, well, fine. And you put it in your report and that it becomes public.
Yeah.
So we don't get into gotcha, even though some people think we do. We really try to work with people because mistakes happen.
Right.
But sometimes.
Well, and at the end of the day, I mean, like you said, it's actually not up to you on whether you're just saying you're an investigator.
That's correct.
I mean, really an auditor is an investigator of finances. So you're just saying, hey, I found this.
Yep.
Just so you know.
Yep.
And
exactly.
Then the board is going to do what they see fit.
And we're trying to, we look for compliance. So if we have grant agreements and different things like that, do these expenditures follow what the grant allows for, that kind of thing. We also, we do reporting, obviously. We've got our website and different things of that nature.
Because everyone can, all that's viewable online, right?
Yeah. www.k3countyauditor.com. And you can see everything we do. We got an online checkbook where you can, and it's searchable. We've got some nice reports out there that people can go to and look at. And there's some Q&A out there where maybe you've got questions about what's an auditor, what's the AICPA, what's internal control, different things of that nature. And we've got answers to those questions out there if you're interested. We've had interns from Olivet, Governor State, and KCC in our office. And every intern that keeps in touch with me, they constantly talk about how wonderful that experience was. And it's not just me. Our chief deputy, Marcia, who is a CPA, is wonderful. And she's tougher than I am on some of these transactions. And a lot of people think it's always me. I take the blame, and that's fine. But
it's your office.
I tell you, Marcia doesn't play.
So you heard it. You heard it here first, man. It's Marcia. Jake is just the front man.
She's caught some stuff. Like I might have an incomplete packet or whatever, and she's like, Jake. Tapping on the desk. Man, do I
giving you that look?
Yeah,
right.
So don't think it's but no, we really have a wonderful working relationship, and we have a good group of folks. And across the county, by and large, we've got good people. I mean, by and large, we've got good people. You've got your issues, but every place does. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then beyond that, we've got, of course, the very contentious part of the statute where we're also the general accountants of the county. There is a court case going on. I'm not going to get into that unless you want to, but to try to deal with that. But and
wait, so did you say you're also the accountants for the county?
Yes. So
how does that work?
Well, basically, our office functions by law as that of a comptroller. So we would be the ones who would produce the financial statements that would be audited by the external auditors. So the auditors would audit the auditor, basically.
Oh my God.
Is what would happen.
My God.
And what should happen, frankly, because you couldn't. If we were responsible for auditing the financial statements, we would audit our own work. And that's every piece of accounting literature that is a conflict of interest.
Well, obviously,
because the crux of accounting and internal control is that no one person can commit fraud and conceal the fraud. So if you were auditing your own work,
that doesn't make sense.
You would be able to commit and conceal fraud.
Yeah, you'd be able to just blanket it over.
So, but the county years ago split the elected office and took the accounting duties along with other duties out of Section 1005 and put it in the finance department under the guise of auditing your own work, which is a complete it's misconstruing that language. But nonetheless, like I said, we've got a court case that will suss all of that out and will give us a ruling on what's law and what isn't, so that we can move forward, because this has been an issue that's been going on for many years. But particularly with my administration, it's been in the courts since August of 2020, but it's been an issue since December, really, of 2016. So it's time to put it to rest.
That's when you took office?
Yes, 2016. So I first raised the issue around December 21st of 16. It got toxic by June of 17. And it's been bad ever since.
Yeah. Well, and I think anyone that just pays attention to just headlines with the Journal, or they hear a blip on the radio.
Yep.
That's,
it's going to come up. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I don't want to dwell on it, but
no, and like I said, this isn't a political arena podcast,
mm-hmm.
So I once, it cracked me up. I think it was about a month ago. I had someone comment on the Kankakee Podcast Facebook
mm-hmm.
page about just saying something about, podcast is great as long as you don't let that certain political group on or whatever. And I'm like, well, and I commented back, I'm like, well, this is not a political podcast. So,
this is learning about people.
Just learning about, right. Exactly.
There's a little that might bleed in because government,
it's going to bleed in. Obviously, it just bleeded in a little bit now, but we're not going to
We're not going there.
We're not going to talk about, right and wrong and who's involved. And I'm not interested in that. Yep. And that's a whole nother
platform.
Yeah.
Whole nother matter.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
but it's good to know and just get like an insight into what you actually do.
Yeah.
Because I know there's people like me that just
Yeah, they just don't know.
They just don't know.
I didn't know until I was in it.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of your job, though, also as an elected official, and I tell people all of the time, elected officials represent you and your interests. It doesn't matter what I think on a particular subject, really. I mean, it really doesn't. In the auditor's role, see, I don't have to take policy positions. So I love that. I can just say, that's wrong because of the law, or that's wrong because of an accounting standard. That's wrong because of an auditing standard or a contract agreement. I don't have to vote on it. I could just throw the issue out there and walk away. I've got the best job in the world.
That's nice. Yeah.
And so when people try to pigeonhole me into policy positions, I can just say, you know what? That doesn't concern me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, though, as an elected official, you represent your constituency. And so if you are on the legislative side of things, it doesn't matter what your personal beliefs are. Unless you tell people when you're running, this is what I believe and this is what you're voting for, regardless of what you want, then okay.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, you go with whatever your constituency wants. And so, but one of the things I tell people all the time is that elected officials have to be accessible and they have to be involved in the community. And so whenever I'm invited to come and give a talk or to meet with people, go to a coffee shop, whatever, I go. And I think it's very important for people to feel that I'm accessible, and hopefully they do feel that way. Hopefully I do come across as someone that you want to have a beer with.
Yeah. But, I would hope so. You're a guy growing hops in Hopkins Park.
That's right. Yeah. So, but yeah. And so but sometimes elected officials forget, and they think that they are the important ones. Look at any organizational chart of a government, and at the very top are the citizens. And that's how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
They are the ones who run the show, and sometimes you get the ones that I pay your salary. Okay.
Okay, that's right. That's the extreme.
But most people are not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are so wonderful, and they go out of their way to be nice to you. Like I get frequently, more than I ever thought I would, I get random letters from constituents, either to my home or to the office, just some giving me some encouragement on one thing or another, some asking questions that they weren't quite sure about. And I write everyone back as well.
Yeah.
Most of my letters back are handwritten because I think that personal touch is a little important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I find elected life is a blessing and a curse.
That's probably why you're probably going to be almost relieved when the second term is.
Oh, I'll be glad.
And you're a year in almost?
Almost a year in, yeah.
For this, and it's a 4 year, another 4 years.
It's another 4 years.
Yeah.
And
it's cool that it's neat that you are the official that has been elected and has also educated yourself within that position.
Yes.
Of finances.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool to know. It's almost like, it's like another way the community is helping someone to just grow their own life.
Right. Right.
And give you that opportunity to do so.
Yeah. Now I will throw a shameless plug in here. So I'm living off of military benefits. So the county isn't paying for my education. It's all
military
VA benefits, because when you join the military from Illinois, they have what's called the Illinois Veterans Grant, and it pays 120 credit hours at the undergraduate or graduate level for any public institution. And then I joined voluntarily the Montgomery GI Bill that you pay into, and then there's money that comes back, which is far beyond what you pay into it. Unfortunately, most veterans do not utilize that, and they end up paying into it and never use it. So there's a ton of money in that bucket. But if it were not for the military, I don't know how I would be
all the schooling and
able to do that.
Yeah.
Very little debt too from school. Where with my level of education, you'd be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I was just gonna say
I don't know.
It's so much money, I would imagine.
Which is outrageous. Isn't that outrageous?
It really is, man.
Anyway.
There we
that's
go.
Another
again.
podcast.
There we go. That's a whole nother.
But see, when I talk money, I like get into.
And that's important. That's good to know.
Yeah.
One thing I was wondering is how many different departments do we really have in our county? Because I feel like there are departments that I've never even, I don't even know exist, Like, of course, I always know the highway department because of my father working for the highway department. But and obviously you got the sheriff. But there are others that I'll just hear about for the first time. And I'm like, that's a thing? I didn't know, So how many different departments are...
Well, when you lump them all together, departments and offices. So offices are headed by elected officials. So the sheriff is not a department, that's an office.
Okay.
The coroner is an office. The auditor's an office, that kind of thing. But most people don't know that. You wouldn't know that.
And it's good. Yeah. It's good to know the difference.
So now, in general, though, we just say department heads. We say departments just because it's easier, but people should know the difference because you're voting for those office holders. You're voting for your state's attorney.
And departments are usually appointed by one of those people in the office, right?
Well, by the board.
Which is the board. It's still an office.
Yeah, but those are offices. Yeah. So all together with elected officials and with appointed officials, there are 28 departments.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. And we have, or 26 departments, I think, and 28 board members is what it is. But anyway, and so there's, the assessor, there's animal control, there's, administration, there's the recorder, which is an office, on and on it goes. So we have a lot. And almost every office has some portion of the general fund that goes as part of their budget, or office or department. But many of them have all these special funds and all these grants and things, including drainage districts and all these other taxing bodies we have and cash or funds that the county holds. There are over 140 funds that the county controls and distributes in various areas and stuff. So it's a lot of money that runs through the county, well over $100 million. And so it's a lot of work to try to manage that and make sure that it is being spent, or I often say it's being well spent. We don't want it to just be spent. We want it to be well spent. Yes.
Yeah. I definitely heard that a time or two growing up from my grandparents,
That's right.
So that's very true.
Yeah.
I just forgot something else I was going to ask you now. I can't remember what it was. Oh, I know. That was another thing I was thinking of before we actually set a date and a time to do this podcast is so not only, you're going to school,
yes,
to the auditor,
yes,
you've got another job too.
I do.
And I'm like, man, it's how does this, it's like, how does this guy, and obviously a family too.
Yes. So, yeah. So I stay busy. I don't sleep much.
Yeah. I hear you. I'm right there with you.
But I've always been that way. Like if you talk to anyone who knew me in high school or when I was a young person, I was always very, very busy. In high school, I was the president of most organizations. And if I wasn't the president, I was an officer of some sort. And, I didn't know where one meeting ended and one began. It was just always something going on.
Yeah.
And I worked all through high school as well. So, busyness has just always been part of my MO. But nonetheless, hopefully I'm impactful. I volunteer a lot as well. So I serve on the Symphony Orchestra Board. I'm the treasurer of that board.
I did see that, yeah.
I'm the treasurer for the Community Foundation, Kankakee River Valley. You notice how you see, and that's the other thing that kind of sucks about being a finance person. You always get stuck being the treasurer everywhere. It's like I do this all day long,
you want to be my accountant, for the podcast. You can be my accountant.
And so, and then I serve on what's now Clove Alliance, or I used to serve. I just rotated off of Clove Alliance's board, and serving our survivors of sexual assault.
Yes.
And, so there's some other boards that I serve on, and hopefully am impactful and that. But volunteering is very important to me, and trying to make a difference in the community is very, very important to me. The Key City Community Development Corporation, I serve with a fantastic group of people with that group, and trying to help build the city of Kankakee. So it's important to me to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, someone's got to do it, and I'm grateful that you're one of those people.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you for that, because it takes time and patience.
It does.
To do all those things and to be part of something like development.
Yeah.
So because it takes time.
Mm-hmm. And people want instant results.
Yeah, and it doesn't work.
I mean, it does not work that way.
I remind myself that just about my own journey, like every single day. I'm like, oh man, if I only had this right now. And it's like, well, Jake, it's a gradual, you can't just have it now.
That's right. That's right.
I just keep trying to tell myself that.
I often tell people that it's like, we've been programmed to think that way though. We've got instant coffee, instant potatoes, instant popcorn, all of that. And it's like we've been programmed to want it now and to think it's going to happen now and that we'll have quality.
Yeah, that's like, the other thing.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way when you're trying to build a life.
Right.
It's like the exact opposite.
Right.
Totally the exact opposite. So
yeah.
I mean, I know we could go on forever.
Oh, we could. I know it's getting. We've probably been talking for an hour and a half or so.
I'd say an hour and a half at this point. So this has been great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, I
for being on it. And anything else you wanted to? I mean, even just with because obviously you've got about a little over 3 years left in the office.
Yep.
In the auditor's office. I mean, is there anything you want people to know that you're working on? I mean, obviously we're not talking about the lawsuit,
right?
But, because that, I know that's usually like the thing that people ask you first. But I mean, let's talk about things besides that. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that's, you want to make sure people know about that you're working on or anything like that?
Well, the big thing is, aside from that is, I want, and this is kind of, I guess, anecdotal or whatever, but I want people to be proud of their auditor's office and to know that we've got high caliber folks, both the elected official and the chief deputy and any other employees who may end up working there, who are working on their behalf. And I want them to be able to trust what the auditor's office says. In terms of specific projects and things like that, I would love to have that website redone before I leave office. I hate that website. And I'm the webmaster, right? It's a Google site. I do it all, but I'm horrible at that kind of thing. So I would love to have a more user-friendly, functional, better presentation. That would be a project. I would love
that's always a project
to have done.
You need a good intern.
Yeah, exactly. A marketing intern.
There you go.
Not these accountants that always want to come to me.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's really just creating that office that people can be proud of, and hopefully they can say that after Jake Lee served as county auditor, our county is better off because he contributed his part. Now, he's not the savior in any way or the hero, or he doesn't get the credit, but he did what he was supposed to do while he was in office, and I can be proud that he was my countywide elected official. And if that's what the majority of people remember me as, I'm okay with all the other BS that I know is out there. And I want to pass the office off to whoever comes next if the voters don't abolish it through referendum. And hopefully they can be proud of inheriting an office that they can take to the next level. So that's what I would say.
Well put. Very well put, man. Very well put.
Yeah,
Jake Lee, thank you.
Well, thank you, Jake Lee.
It's like I said, it's so silly, but it's so funny at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is great. And no one really does this. I don't do this. So
okay. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad that you took the invitation. So
absolutely.
I guess that goes back to what you were saying earlier about making yourself open if someone invites you somewhere.
And who would deny an invitation from you? Anyway?
Well, you might be surprised. You might be surprised there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've had some great people on here.
Thank you.
Project Headspace and Timing, for example. I mean, these guys, just some wonderful people, and I look forward to seeing who else. I mean, you got a lot of folks to pick from too, so that helps.
The list keeps getting longer and the subjects and the places, it just keeps growing.
Absolutely,
so, yeah. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, well, that concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake Lamore. Please follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Kankakee Podcast, and also subscribe or follow wherever it is that you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify. Leave us a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts if you can as well. You can also go to KankakeePodcast.com and sign up for our mailing list. You can find out how you can become a sponsor of the podcast as well. All that stuff is at KankakeePodcast.com. And look forward to talking with you next week. And, of course, our infamous theme song by Lupe Carroll.
People tend to stick to you.